The recent vote in the United Nations Security Council against the Israeli government expanding construction into East Jerusalem has made more people aware and alarmed over the problems of the United Nations and the danger that it poses to various countries around the world. What is happening is something that has been forecast years ago by the John Birch Society, even at the founding meeting, where our founder, Robert Welch, outlined the dangers of the United Nations. Soon after the founding of the John Birch Society, we started a program to get us out of the United Nations and the United Nations out of the United States. We have spent all these decades alarming and educating people as to the problems with the United Nations, that it was started at the very onset by communists. You can find that out on our issues page on our website, and the history of the United Nations. I don't want to go into it here, other than to say that a Soviet agent within the State Department, Alger Hiss, cooperated with the Russian authorities in helping write the United Nations Charter. And so it's always been a problem from the very beginning. What we see is something that is creeping into all aspects of American life from the United Nations. Most hot buttons, if you will, of the issues that are out there actually emanate from the United Nations. Let's say you're interested in the schools. You're interested in stopping Common Core. All of that is traceable to the United Nations, including the internationalizing of teachers' unions connected with the United Nations. It doesn't matter whether it's the NEA or the American Federation of Teachers or any other. They're on an international scale coming under the jurisdiction of the United Nations. The same way with support your local police. Our police are aimed to be internationalized through the United Nations. The first step is simply nationalizing the police in America, and then the second step is internationalizing them under the power of the United Nations. We're already seeing international seminars and that sort of thing, and cooperation between chiefs of police in cities in the United States and others through United Nations auspices. So that's another danger from the United Nations. Our armed forces. We no longer control our own armed forces. We have not gone to war since the Second World War unless it's under the auspices of the Security Council of the United Nations. We have never declared war since we declared war in World War II. It's always with the permission or the direction of the United Nations that we've been involved in various wars all around the world. In fact, we've had more war since this so-called peace organization was established than we did before. And there are other things too, land use, water use. A lot of the farmers and people that are concerned with timber and so on and so forth. All of these regulations through Congress, maybe, sometimes just simply edicts and presidential executive orders and such, all emanate originally from the United Nations. And so it doesn't matter what issue you're talking about. Almost all of them, the problem emanates from the United Nations itself. Now, Agenda 21 is pretty obvious. That is a United Nations project. And so on and on and on, we see this problem. There's only one solution to it, and the solution really isn't the one that's being given to us on national media by certain pundits of simply withholding a portion or all of the funding to the United Nations. They can still come down with their edicts and impose them on us, for instance, through treaties and that sort of thing, without any money changing hands at all. And that's another part that a lot of people don't understand, whether it's the Trans-Pacific Partnership or anything like NAFTA and so on and so forth. These are all under the jurisdiction of the United Nations. Somewhere in those treaties, you will find it either buried or right up front in the case of NATO. You take a look at the NATO treaty. Within the first 8 articles, everything is tied to the United Nations. So we're not really an independent organization as an armed force of the United States or even within the jurisdiction of NATO. It all ties back to the United Nations. So we say we need to get out of the United Nations and the United Nations out of the United States. It would be the solution to so many of our problems that we have today, that all of us are battling either one here, one there, or everybody's trying to do everything. Doesn't matter. The solution is getting out, not withholding funding. And this is something we've been preaching for almost 60 years.